I have access.
Welcome everyone to our November DAAUG presentation, Accessing the Main Events. Today we'll be taking a look at the leading conferences, virtual user groups, and MVP program and global summit events. Several of the conferences will have accompanying interviews from the organizers, which will serve to enhance the perspective of these events. The first event we'll cover is Access Day with Armenstein. Okay, and this event is a one-day periodic conference with varying locations, and the 2021 date next year is still to be determined. Armen is the organizer and host, and some of the featured speakers are Access MVPs, book authors, and development team members for Access at the event. The URL in blue above will give additional information about the event and the jstreettech.com site. The next event is also organized by Armen, and that is the Access Cascade Conference. This is a 3-day annual event that is in Oregon at the Silver Falls Lodge and Convention Center, hosted by Armenstein, and they do have a date set for 2021, from the 16th to 18th of October, and they also feature Access MVP speakers with community leaders and Access development team members. The URL is the same for jstreettech.com above, and that URL will come for both events. Okay, and now an interview with Armen about Access Day and the Access Cascade Conference. Welcome, and we're here with Armenstein, who is the coordinator host of the Access Day and Access Cascade conferences, and we'll be going over a bunch of details regarding these events. And welcome, Armen, and we just wanted to start with when and where these conferences are.
Sure. So we've been running Access Day conferences for several years now, and they have happened around the country. We've had one in Denver and one in Irvine, California, but most of the time they happen near to Seattle, so either in Redmond or in Bellevue. And those conferences are they're 1 day long, and they're usually about 6 or 7 topics, and they often are in the spring and coincide with the MVP Summit. And the reason I do that is because I have a bunch of MVPs that travel from all over the place to come to the MVP Summit hosted by Microsoft. So what I do is I just piggyback onto that, and I add an extra day for Access Day. And that's just so I can get good speakers, good presenters, and they're already in town anyway. Obviously, with the pandemic, last spring, the summit went virtual, and so I canceled the Access Day because I had presenters from Europe, and anyway, it was kind of a mess. It was all at the last minute. That was, I believe, in March. And the next MVP Summit apparently is also going to be virtual this next March. So I'm not sure what's happening with Access Day, the single day ones. In the meantime, we can talk about the Access Cascade Conference. That is one that we just put on a 2-day conference virtually a couple weeks ago. It was a good success. We had a lot of people sign in from all over the world. I think we had 10 countries represented between speakers and attendees. So that was a good conference. There was 8 topics spread over 2 mornings. And that one went really well. But just so everyone knows the background of the Access Cascade conference, it's a renaming of the Portland Access User Group conference. So the PAUG conference, as it's known, has been very popular for many, many years and run really well by Jack Stockton. But Jack decided that it was time for him to step back from it. And so I said I didn't want to let it go because I love that conference and I love the venue, which is at Silver Falls State Park in Oregon. So I said, Jack, you don't want to do it anymore, but I've been helping him with it anyway for the last few years to line up speakers. I said, why don't I just take over the whole thing since you don't want to do it anymore? And he agreed to that. So that was right. And my first decision with that conference was to cancel it at the physical venue because Silver Falls wasn't able to take a group this last month in October. So that's why we did the virtual version, but we are, fingers crossed, hoping that next October, we will be able to put on the new Access Cascade conference in person at Silver Falls, which is a beautiful venue. And it takes place over 3 days. And we stay there at the site because they have lodges and cabins. And it's a fantastic time. So that's what we're hoping for. So everyone hope for a vaccine and for better news on the virus front so that we'll be able to do that.
Definitely. Okay. And these 2 events, how long have they been taking place for? How long have they been around?
I think the first Access Day conference that we hosted was probably around 6 or 7 years ago, I believe. So we've done several of those over the years. And the Access Cascade conference obviously is brand new because under that name. But before that, I believe Jack had run it probably almost 20 years ago is probably when it started. I know that I didn't go to the very first one, and I think I've been going to it for at least 15 years. So it's been going a long time. It's a venerated conference in the Access world, that one.
Definitely. Okay. And these are all in English, both events. And
yes.
At your most recent conference, and I guess these are virtual, the one in October, who were some of the featured speakers and their topics for?
Yeah, I don't have them all right in front of me, but I can tell you several of them. We had Carl Donnerbauer and Philip, I think his last name is pronounced Stiefel. They did a presentation about access security. Kevin Bell did a presentation. It was great. Luke Chung of FMS is a perennially respected speaker, and he did a presentation. Alison Balter showed off some pretty cool access applications and some of the techniques that she uses. Inte Jan from the Netherlands. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name. It starts with a K. Inte Jan did a presentation on calling web services from Access, which was really interesting. So anyway, it runs the gamut. I think I've missed a couple, but it was 8 speakers. Oh, and Ebo from the Access team and Joe, they did a presentation on what Microsoft's doing in the Access realm and showing off what their roadmap is looking like moving forward. Okay.
Sounds like everything is covered for sure.
Yeah.
And when these events resume in person, hopefully next year, what local activities or any sightseeing opportunities are available if the attendees are there in person? I guess this would be either for Redmond or Silver Falls.
Yeah, for Redmond, Redmond, for people around the world that don't know, Redmond is a suburb of Seattle, and Seattle is a major tourist destination. So once we get past the pandemic and people are able to travel again, there's a ton of stuff to do around Redmond and in the Seattle area in general. You can be out on the water, you can be up in the mountains. Depending on the time of year, there's all kinds of activities to be done in those sort of areas. Seattle is kind of cool because you could be from the water to the mountains in about an hour. Like it's just ocean, salt water to the mountains and lakes and rivers. Lots of hiking is around. There's really cool tours too. You can go down and see the Ballard Locks. So for technical people like me, I'm fascinated by the locks because they're about 100 years old now and they've been running pretty much flawlessly that entire time, and they move ships in and out from the sound from Puget Sound into the lake system that we have in Seattle. So it's pretty fascinating
north
to watch.
Of the city, right? Or slightly north.
Yeah, it's north west. So basically northwest of downtown Seattle, out in Ballard. There's the Boeing factory tour. If you want to see how airplanes get assembled, it's pretty fascinating to go on a Boeing tour. Those are a couple of things, and obviously we have lots of museums and sites to see otherwise. So it's we love living in Seattle. It's a really fun thing for people to go do.
And headquarters, obviously.
Headquarters for Microsoft. Yeah. So right. Redmond is the headquarters of all things Microsoft. There are a few other towns nearby that have Microsoft buildings like Bellevue and Issaquah, but the main campus of Microsoft is in Redmond. And so it's really nice to have access to a lot of the people on the Access team from, that are just local here.
Okay. Obviously plenty to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then about you, what is your own background with Microsoft Access?
My background, when I was back in the day when Access was at 1.1, I guess, this is probably about 92, 93. I heard about it. I saw it demoed at a company I was working at. I didn't have my own company back then like I do now. And I saw this thing, and you know what I really saw? I saw the relationship window. I saw the fact that you could tie tables together with relationships and have it enforce referential integrity in a desktop product. And my mind was blown. I saw that, and I've been working in IBM mid-range systems, and we didn't even have that kind of graphical interface or anything for the AS400 and the machines that I was working on. So I saw that and I just thought, wow, this is the future. Like, to write on a desktop, to be able to have a true relational database with integrity enforced was pretty cool. So I put that in the back of my mind, and then I went forward. I started my own company in 94. So we've been going like 26 years now. And soon after that, I started getting my first projects to use Access to solve business problems for companies. And that's how I got started. And I go that far back. I also contributed to a couple of Rock's book titles. So the Access VBA Programmer's Reference for, I think, 2003 and 2007. And then my writing for 2007 moved on into 2010 to that version. So I contributed to 3 of those editions as far as the VBA programming. So I go back a ways with Access.
Okay, and that also covers your current work then, obviously, because your organizer sponsor, that's the J Street Technology.
Yeah, so I'm the president of J Street, and we build Access and web applications. So for desktop, we use Access and SQL Server, and for web, we use ASP.NET MVC and SQL Server. And sometimes we do a hybrid, like a lot of people suggest. Sometimes you can have an Access desktop application, a SQL backend that maybe is hosted up in the cloud or in Azure. And then you can also have a web application that you could use for a portal or something with less functionality, because we still find that feature for feature, web development is more expensive than Access, but sometimes it's exactly what you need. And so we'll do a portion of the functionality on the web.
Okay, very good. And how did you originally get involved with running the Microsoft Access conference or conferences now?
Yeah. Well, from way back in the 90s, I was the president of a local Access users group, the Pacific Northwest Access Developers Group. And I ran that for years. And so I was used to the idea of having people gather and discuss Access and have topics. And that was great. And then as user groups kind of waned in popularity because of the internet and being able to find everything online, I found that the monthly 1 hour or a couple hour meetings were less popular. And that's true, I think, across the board, although there's still some good ones that are still going, like the one in Denver. But in our case, we couldn't keep it going on the monthly format. But what I found was that people liked being able to get together for more topics and have a longer period of time. So that's when I started attending PAAUG down in Portland, and speaking at other user groups around the world, like the one in London, and there's some in Vienna that Carl puts on. Anyway, I liked the idea, and I thought, well, you know what, I can do one of these myself, because I'm in Redmond, and with the MVP Summit, I have these speakers, like I said earlier, so I can put this on myself. And so that's why I got started with it. And because I listen, if we like something, then sometimes it's on us, it's our responsibility to continue it forward. You know, it's one thing to say, oh, I really like this thing, someone else do it because I like it. Well, in my case, I said, well, I really like it, so I'm going to take it on and do some of it myself because I enjoy doing it. And it's fun to see everybody and really have a community. I love the community that's around Microsoft Access.
Okay. Yes, and interest has grown for that reason. Okay, yeah. And then finally, how does somebody that wants to attend virtually or otherwise, how would they find out more information about your conferences and registering and so forth?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Our URL that we have for this purpose that directs you right to the registration area or any news that's coming up is accessday.org. So just like it sounds, no hyphens or anything like that. And once you go there, then you can see upcoming conferences. You can see a list of past conferences. And whenever there's something being registered right now, then we have a registration link. And also on that page, you can ask to be put on our mailing list. So we have, you know, hundreds of people, I don't know how many, but that have expressed interest or attended in the past. And we always put out information to that list when anything's coming up. So that's the way to stay informed.
Okay, well, thanks to Armin for his interview. And our next conference event is DevCon Vienna with Karl Donnerbauer. Okay, and this is a two-day annual conference event located in Vienna. It is virtual in 2021, still to be determined by Karl, and their speakers also feature Access MVPs, Access community leaders, and the development team members. The next event is also organized by Karl, and it is the Access Enticler Conference in Germany. This event is 2 days annually in Nuremberg, Germany, and they do have a 2021 date set for October 2nd and 3rd, and they feature German language access experts along with Access development team members. The URLs are the same for further information at thedomkarl.com in blue above. And now we'll have an interview with Karl about DevCon Vienna and the AEK. Okay, welcome. We're here with Karl Donnerbauer in Europe, and he will be going over two of his conferences that he hosts, the AEK and the Access DevCon in Vienna, Austria. So welcome, Karl, and we'd like to start with when and where are your conferences?
Yeah, good morning and good evening here in Europe. Well, as you said, I have two conferences. One is the AEK, it's the older one, the German one. This year I had to cancel it, but next year it will be in October again. There's already some dates, but as it's in German, I think it's not that very important for your audience here, but it will be next October. We plan it at least if Corona lets us start there. You never know what happens next week, but we have to plan for next October already. So the AK, the Access Entwickler Conference, will be next October. Whereas my second one, it's the Access DevCon Vienna. This is completely in English. And we did it virtually also this year, this April. And I plan to do another one next March or April. It's not yet fixed. And do it again virtually because I don't expect to go Corona away that fast. I expect it to be there in spring and summer, so we have to do it virtually again. And it will be at the end of March or beginning of April. It's not yet completely fixed.
Very good. Okay, and how long have each of your conferences been taking place?
Well, the AK, the German one, is the mother of my conferences. I started it in 1998, So we had 22 of them, and the 23rd would have been this year because of Corona. We couldn't do it. So it's 22 years old. And the other one, the DEF CON, I started it in 2017, so it will be number 5 next year.
Very good. Okay. And at your most recently held conference, who were some of the featured speakers and their related topics?
Well, at the DEF CON, we always have some people from Microsoft, especially in the moment it's Ebo Kansa, the program manager, you know him from your presentations there. Well, he always talks about news and access. We also had Jeff Conrad, for example, from the documentation team at Microsoft. He talked about access documentation and help. And we had the usual suspects from the US, for example, a certain George Young, who did something about logic apps, and, well, the usual suspects, Luke Chung, Kevin Bell, etc., etc. I think that the more interesting part for the Americans is that we have a mix of European developers there. That's what you can't see, or not in this quantity at your conferences. For example, Italian colleagues or Dutch colleagues, UK, people from UK, from Romania, from Germany. So it's a very rich mix of people. That's also one of the goals of this DEF CON, to bring people together from all over the world.
Okay, that sounds like a great agenda. When these conferences are in person, we'll have to see what happens next year. What local activities where you are and sightseeing opportunities are available to the people that can attend in person, whether it's Germany or Austria?
Well, normally I do some touristical stuff with people. At my Viennese conference, I always do guided tours because I have some background. I studied history of art some decades ago, and that's why I guide them through some parts of Vienna. For example, we had themes, subjects at our tours, like the Jewish Vienna or the medieval Vienna, the Baroque Vienna, etc. And yeah, it lasts for several hours, and people are knocked out after this. And well, if I do my German conferences, it's almost the same. I also do guided tours at Nuremberg or Hanover, etc. And we also always have an evening reception where they have local food, another important thing of interest. Yeah.
Okay. Which is the most important. Okay.
And of course, in a big city like Vienna, you have a lot to watch. We could do this several years again if Corona does.
Exactly. That would be nice. Hopefully. Okay. And for you, what is your own background with Microsoft Access?
Well, I started with Access with version 1.1, so in the early 90s. And from then on, I worked, well, since 95 or so professionally with Access. I've done about 150 projects with Access because I not only build applications, but also do a lot of consulting. Yeah, I'm an Access MVP since 98, so for some years already. So I do, it's my main tool, Access. So I work about 25 years professionally with Access. In all of Europe, I would say, in France, in Italy, Germany, Austria, of course.
Okay. And your current work, are you currently using Access in your current work? Or?
Yeah, sure, for 95%. Okay. But today, for example, I did my first serious Power App. Yeah, for a charity I support. But of course, the rest is almost everything is Access, SQL Server, etc. So I have some industrial clients I service. I'm writing a book about professional access development. I hope I'm back in the schedule already. I'm organizing virtual events, and I also started to prepare the next conferences. You have to do it almost a year before.
Okay.
So a lot of work.
And how did you initially get involved with running and organizing the Microsoft Access conferences, AEK and DevCon?
It was the Americans again. You know, in the 90s, there was an American magazine, Access Advisor, and I read it almost every month. And they had the big conferences, the Access Advisor conferences for Access. And, well, I thought, why don't we have such a thing in Europe and in German, if possible? So I started a discussion in the back then NNTP news groups where I posted. And I said, well, what do you think about having such a wonderful conference? We can learn from each other. And they said, well, Carl, do it. And so I did it. And they came. That's how it started in 97, 98.
Okay, very nice.
Because you always have to do the ideas and the work yourself. That's what you learn very quickly.
That's for sure. Okay, and then how would somebody find out more about either conference and how to register for them if they were interested in attending or virtually attending?
Yeah, I think for the more interesting one, for the Access DevCon, there's of course a webpage, accessdevcon.com, where you find all the dates, agenda. You also find the videos from this year's conference, like George's video or the videos from the Microsoft people, and you can watch it for free. And of course, you can subscribe to our mailing list, which is important to get informed. And for the other one, for the German one, it's just my website, donkarl.com, like donauberkarl.com.
Okay, so the previous conference agenda and the speakers are listed, and
there's always a history there. Yeah, you can.
Okay, so that you can log in and find all the information right on the site, including registration and related information.
Yep.
Okay, well that sounds great. That's definitely a good thing. Okay, and then finally, is there anything else that you would like to add personally about the conferences and the events that you host?
Yeah, for people watching, I'm always looking for presenters. So if somebody has an interesting subject, contact me. You can find my email address at the websites I named here, and just tell me what you want to present. It's always interesting to get new people, not always the same usual suspects, you know?
Okay, very good. Well, we definitely thank you for your time and enlightening us about both of these European conferences. Certainly something to look forward to, and hopefully they will be in person as opposed to virtual coming up. So
yeah, for example, for my German conference, it wasn't possible to do it this October. So I did a consolation meeting, that's what I called it, a few weeks ago, virtual, and there were 220 people watching it. You know, if it's online, if it doesn't cost anything, people come in masses. You have them 200, 250, no problem to get them. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
So the Access people are interested, but it's difficult in the moment, of course.
Right, at least the interest is there. That's a good thing.
Yeah, so. Access lives and grows.
Okay, thanks to Carl again for his interview. And the next conference we'll be covering is the Spain Access Developers Conference. Okay, this event is one day, hosted in Spanish in Madrid by Angel Gil, and their 2021 next year is still to be determined, and they feature Spanish language access experts. The URL above, Descubre el poder de sus datos, discover the power of your data. We'll have the additional support information for the event. Okay, and now an interview with Angel about the Spain Access Developers Conference. We are here today with Angel Gil in Spain, and he's the organizer for the Descubre el poder de sus datos, which is the Discover the Power of Your Data, and that is part of the conferences in Spain, Conferencias Desarrolladores Access, so the developer conference for access in Spain, in Europe, and we'll be discussing a bunch of the details of this conference, and we'll begin, and we'll conduct in English and Spanish, and I'll begin now with Angel. So welcome, Angel, bienvenidos. And so the first question we'd like to ask is, when and where is your conference? ¿Cuándo y dónde está su conferencia?
Sí, nuestras conferencias las hacemos durante todo el año de forma online y excepto una vez al año que la hacemos de forma presencial en Madrid.
We do our conferences online throughout the year, and then once a year we have an in-person conference in Madrid.
Okay. And how long have your conferences been taking place? ¿Cuánto tiempo lleva teniendo lugar su conferencia?
Nosotros hace ya muchos años que estamos realizando estas conferencias. Nuestras primeras, me parece desde mayo de 2014, las primeras conferencias online que tenemos registradas.
We've been doing these for many years. I believe that it was May of 2014 that we had our first conference registrations.
Okay. And is the conference in English or in another language? So la conferencia se lleva en inglés o en otro idioma?
De momento solo las hacemos en español. Es muy raro que hayamos tenido alguna conferencia de algún invitado en otro idioma, por regla general en español.
Normally the conferences are always given in Spanish. It's unusual that we would have somebody come in speaking in a different language. So at the moment they are in Spanish.
Okay. And at your most recent conference, who are some of the featured speakers and their topics? So en su conferencia más reciente, ¿quiénes son algunos de los oradores destacados y sus temas?
Ok, pues nosotros tenemos ahora para la semana que viene, nuestras conferencias las hacemos el tercer jueves de cada mes y este mes que viene, la semana que viene, pues tenemos dos oradores para hacer nuestra conferencia. Tenemos a Mac Pegasus y tenemos a Xavi, que son dos destacados colaboradores en España dentro de los foros y que nos van a realizar pues una ponencia sobre launchers dentro de Access, cómo lanzar aplicaciones Access.
So for example, at our next conference, we will have two Access developers from Spain who are participants in online fora, and they will be presenting about using the launcher in Microsoft Access.
Okay. And if your conference is in person, what local activities and sightseeing opportunities are available to the attendees? So, si tu conferencia toma lugar en persona, ¿qué actividades locales y oportunidades de turismo están disponibles para los asistentes?
Ok, pues como os contaba, nosotros hacemos al año hacemos una conferencia presencial en Madrid. A ver, en Madrid tenemos una oferta de ocio y cultura pues bastante importante. Tenemos una oferta gastronómica impresionante. Si alguien asiste a nuestras conferencias, pues también puede degustar nuestra gastronomía. Y este año, por desgracia, pues con el tema del virus, del COVID, pues no hemos podido hacer la reunión. Pero vamos, normalmente en Madrid y bueno, pues eso, hacemos lo que es una jornada presencial, ocupamos toda la mañana realizando diversas ponencias y luego por la tarde lo que solemos hacer es una mesa redonda, pues ya de forma más distendida.
At our conference in Madrid, there are a number of cultural highlights in Madrid. It's a center of cultural importance in Spain. One of the best are the gastronomic offerings in Madrid. The food is fantastic. The way the conference is organized in Madrid is that we have presentations during the morning And then in the afternoon, we have a large roundtable where everybody can participate.
Okay, very good. Okay, now about experience, what is your background in Microsoft Access? So, ¿cuál es su propia experiencia en Microsoft Access?
Ok, bueno, como desarrollador Access llevo más de 20 años utilizando esta herramienta. Realmente no soy programador a tiempo completo, sino que yo desempeño labores administrativas en una gran empresa. Pero comparto, o sea, utilizo desde hace, pues eso, más de 20 años, utilizo únicamente, utilizo esta herramienta pues para facilitar el trabajo en todos los ámbitos que desarrollo dentro de mi oficio.
I have been working with Access for over 20 years, using the tool. More recently, I'm not a full-time developer as I have administrative responsibilities within my business, but I still use it extensively and within my business.
Okay, and what is your current work and how did you get involved in running an Access Microsoft conference? So, ¿cuál es tu trabajo actual y cómo se involucró en la realización de una conferencia de Microsoft Access?
A ver, yo a las conferencias de Access llego hace ya muchos años, llego a través de los foros. Aquí en España sí que hay mucha cultura en foros de Access y hay mucho movimiento dentro de los foros y así es como conozco pues este mundo. Actualmente lo que hago es presidir el grupo de usuarios Access España. Cada X años cambiamos de presidente pues para ir rotando y bueno, pues actualmente me dedico a coordinar las labores del grupo de usuarios de Access España. Las reuniones, los webinars, las reuniones presenciales en Madrid. Pues esa es mi labor aquí dentro del equipo.
I am currently the president of the Spain Access User Group. We rotate every few years. And I first became involved with this through forums in Spain, and that's how I got to know the people. And as we said, we've been doing the conference since about 2014. I administer, as the president of DAAUG Spain, the conferences, the in-person, the online, user group activity, and so forth.
Okay. And how do we find out more about your conferences and how to register? So, ¿cómo averiguamos más sobre su conferencia y cómo registrarse?
Sí, pues tenemos una página web, ahora os la paso, que es accessusergroups.org y ahí a través de esa página aparecerán las distintas delegaciones de Access User Group, porque no solo hay en España. Y dentro de la sección de España pues veréis no solo las conferencias mensuales, sino los proyectos que tenemos a lo largo del año.
Our monthly conferences are on the accessusergroups.org site, and for the annual conference, there is another webpage.
Okay, very good. And then, is there anything else that you would like to add? ¿Algo más que le gustaría agregar? Yo estoy pensando en algo que esta conferencia de 2020 fue cancelada y próximo año ustedes tienen planes todavía si va a ser en persona o va a ser virtual.
Sí. No, nosotros tenemos intención de repetir la conferencia presencial. Lo hacemos todos los años y es donde mejor nos conocemos los programadores Access de España. Pero no tenemos fecha porque, bueno, ahora estamos volviendo a confinarnos. Las autoridades están volviendo a cerrar las ciudades de España y no sabemos cuándo podremos reunirnos de forma presencial. Pero cuando todo esto pase, seguro que nos volveremos a reunir de forma presencial. Seguro.
We absolutely intend to hold our in-person conference this coming year. We normally have it every year. Unfortunately, we had to cancel in 2020, but we absolutely, positively will have an in-person conference. We don't have a date yet because unfortunately, we are now entering again into a confinement or lockdown period. But as soon as we have an idea of when we'll be able to open up again, we will most assuredly host our conference in person.
Quiero puntualizar, o sea, quería daros las gracias por haceros eco de nuestras actividades aquí en España y darlas a difundir en vuestra comunidad, que es también muy grande. Así que, pues eso, muchísimas gracias por darnos difusión al grupo de usuarios Access España.
I would like to thank you for giving some information and spreading the news about the Access activities in Spain to a larger audience. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, yes, certainly. And we look forward to seeing the details of the next conference and to hopefully speaking with you again in the future. So muchas gracias. Estamos agradecidos de estar aquí contigo otra vez y buena suerte con la próxima conferencia en el futuro, en 2021.
Ojalá podamos hacerlo.
Ojalá.
Ojalá. Sí. Gracias, Ángel.
Gracias a vosotros.
Okay, thanks again to Angel for his interview. Our next conference we'll be covering is the event in the Netherlands, and it's Netherlands Access Developer Day. Okay, this event is a one-day conference that is in Amsterdam, and there are two organizers, Danielle Pollock and Lars Siemens. Their 2021 is still to be determined, and their speakers feature Microsoft Access MVPs, community leaders, and Access development team members. Their URL is above for the Netherlands Access Developer Day with support information about the event. And we will now have an interview with Danielle and Lars about the NOD conference. Welcome, everybody. We're here with Lars and Daniel for a review of the NADD Netherlands Access Developer Day conference event. And we just wanted to go through some highlights of this event. And we would start with when and where is the conference?
Well, that's a good question. I'll pass to immediately because it's a difficult question. I'll pass to Lars.
Okay.
Well, we are looking now to do it, of course, next year due to COVID. We are not sure yet if we can do it in person or do a virtual an NADD, but that means is that we're looking in May 2021.
Okay. And how long has your conference been taking place?
We are now, next year will be the third year we're actually doing it.
Okay. And is the conference conducted in English or another language?
It's always in English. We have international speakers also. And we're Dutch, so most of us do understand and speak English also. So to give it a wide range of international speakers as well as in information, we do everything in English. So all the documentation is also provided in English to the guests.
Okay. And at your most recent conference, who were some of the featured speakers or topics of the conference?
We had several people from America. We had someone from Denmark. We had people from Germany. I think, unless I miss, of course, some Dutch speakers. Luke was there as one of the sponsors. He's of course American. And the attendees were, I think most of the attendees, if not all, were actually from Europe, but we did have inquiries from as far away as New Zealand. So people are quite interested in Access conferences from all over the world. The advantage of Europe, of course, is that it's not so far away most of the places. So people actually did travel from Ireland, Switzerland, Belgium, Germany, and of course Holland. So that was actually quite enjoyable, and there was a good mix of people there in person and of some people presenting remotely.
Okay, so so Danielle and Lars, what are your own backgrounds with Microsoft Access, and what is your current work?
Okay, I think it's easiest if I start with this. It's actually, I mentioned this the other day, I think to Lars, yeah, I mentioned it yesterday to Lars, a very long time ago, which is, probably close to 40 years ago. I was actually, I actually had written my own database on a Commodore 64. And I was trying to sell this. And then somehow I wound up freelancing and later being employed by a company and writing stuff in DBase 2. And that went on to DBase 4. And I also did some professional training to do with databases. And then in 1989, I started my own company, Assist Supporting Your Systems, which is still the company that I own and where I obviously work. And for our own internal uses, we converted some software from DBase 4 to Access, and that was actually the start of using Access for us. And the original intention of my company was actually to provide IT support and not to do software development. But in Dutch, there's a saying, the blood goes where it cannot go. So somehow I found myself developing software again. And this was to start with some small software for billing for dermatologists. And this small software grew into something, well, very, very big with, I don't know, in between 100 and 200 tables now. And it actually is a big success because we are in numbers the market leader for medical software for small clinics. So we have about 70 clinics running this software. And that keeps me busy and it keeps a number of other people busy. And actually the reason I found myself more in touch with the Access community is because Tom van Stiphout suggested I attend one of the conferences done by Carl in Vienna. And I went there several years ago and I met Michal there. And a year later, Michal called me and said, well, I'm coming to Holland. Would you like to get some Access developers together? And I responded a little bit or actually reacted a little bit over enthusiastically because I found myself organizing a whole conference. And then the next year I thought, well, shall we do it again? And well, the answer was yes. So here we are preparing for our third conference.
Nice.
Very good. Okay. And Lars, what is your experience with Microsoft Access in your current work?
Well, as a developer, none, because I'm not a developer. So my role within SIS and DISI is more marketing, business development.
Okay.
So I'll take care of the website and all the marketing materials, and especially for the NUT, it's the organizing together with Daniel and all the communication around it, and making sure the speakers has everything and yeah, like that. More marketing communication related.
All right, and then how would somebody find out more about the Netherlands Access Developer Day and then how to register for it, whether it's in person or virtual?
Well, one of the things that I did in preparation for the last one and probably also for the first one is I expanded my LinkedIn network by actually linking to as many people as I could find who are Access developers. So do come and find me on LinkedIn and link to me. That's one way to see my updates with regard to the Access Developer Day. Also, there is a mailing list to which you can subscribe. We'll mail you the exact subscription details after this. And that mailing list will get well, messages about, well, we've decided when the Developer Day will be done, and these are the speakers, and all the information about what's coming up will be primarily on, or well, not primarily, will be on that mailing list, but also on our LinkedIn communications. And of course, the website itself.
Okay, very good. And is there anything else, any other topic or you'd like to add?
I would actually like to add something which is probably not in your question list. We talked about the concept of fun a little bit before we actually started this recording. For us, fun is quite an important thing, and we are very serious in what we do. We want to write, I won't say perfect software because that's not possible, but we want to make good software. But we actually attempt to do everything that we do well, but we also want to have fun with the people who are our customers or the attendees or our co-workers. We just want to have something nice because otherwise, well, why waste your time on this? So for the first node, there was actually a boat trip with different boats, and we went across the lake near where my office is in Aalsmeer. And it was a beautiful summer's day. And we went to have fish at the fish stall, and we all sat and stood outside. And then we went back over the lake, and people really enjoyed that. And on the second night, we went like on a big boat on a tour over the water near here. So if we do another physical conference, you can probably expect some kind of nautical theme where we'll have fun doing something a little bit different. And also part of the reason for organizing this conference is to get people to meet each other and interact and have a little bit of fun, and not just be sitting there and listening to all kinds of presentations about technical subjects. So it's also about the well, I won't say emotional aspect, but the fun aspect of interacting with other people and meeting new people. And it's also useful from a business perspective to meet new people. If what seems likely now, we will actually do a virtual conference. Expect the virtual conference not to be your usual virtual conference. That doesn't mean we will have clowns or acrobats or other stuff, but it will be different. And we'll try to have it be a fun event too.
Okay, so thanks to Danielle and Lars for their interview. And our last conference event is the UK National Seminar. Okay. And this event is a one-day annual conference in Hemel Hempstead, United Kingdom, and the organizer is Margaret Chamberlain, and their 2021 event is still to be determined. They have Access MVP speakers, and they feature local access experts, and the UK AUG.co URL above will have their support information. Okay. Okay, we'll now move on to our next type of event, the virtual user groups. The Access User Groups.org group is a monthly virtual user group, and each of their groups meets once monthly at its own time. The different groups are Access ET, which stands for Eastern Time. The Access España is in Spanish. There's Access for Beginners, Access Latino America, which is in Spanish. And then they have an Access Lunchtime and SQL Server with Access group. URL above has their agenda, their schedules, and their monthly scheduled meetings listed for more information. And this is our DAAUG Denver Area Access user groups. Okay, and we meet monthly on the third Thursday of each month. Our format is a lab and networking at 6 p.m. and then a presentation, our main presentation at 6:30 p.m. We feature Access MVPs, community leaders, Access development team members as speakers, and user group members. Our DAAUG.org is where you can find out information about our meetings and other support information. And finally, we'll conclude with the MVP program and Global Summit. Okay. So the MVP Summit is a multi-day event, and it is for MVPs and regional directors. It is in Redmond, and it will be virtual. It's currently set for March of next year. And the URL in blue above has that support information. And now we will have an interview with Microsoft's Ebo Kwanzaa about the MVP program and Global Summit.
So I think first I want to just quickly talk about what MVP is as a whole, and then I'll go into the summit briefly. So as you can see on the slide, MVPs are known as Microsoft's most valuable professionals. And basically what they are, as the description shows, is they're experts of a particular product who are appreciative of sharing their expertise with their community. Not only with the kind of broader community across the world, but also with the Microsoft community as well. And what I mean by that is they're experts in helping us understand, okay, when we're shipping a feature into insiders or into production, or we're even in the midst of thinking about a feature, they are the frontline workers who help us say, hey, this is a great idea, or maybe this is, how you can change your strategy a little bit, or this is not a good idea at all. And so they're really our vocal experts in saying access, is great in these ways, and this is how I think you can also shape your features based on the community things that I've been hearing. And so it's kind of twofold. That's the kind of Microsoft internal part, but the community part is they are leaders of the community that they essentially run. And so a lot of MVPs, what they do is they host annual sessions or conferences that are based across the world. So we just had an MVP-driven session in Germany. We have one in Austria, and the list goes on. And so they are the ones responsible for hosting the entire company and countrywide session that Access presenters can come and present at. Either MVPs or just general Access experts can be ones to participate in those presentations, and then I'm usually invited to also present as well. And so they are the ones who are just working kind of end to end between the Microsoft community as well as the general audience. And that's what I think Microsoft really values a lot about MVPs, because they're not only able to help us grow internally, but they're also helping raise awareness in their community as best as they can. And so when we're looking into kind of what programs that we host for MVPs and the benefits that come with that, the MVP Summit is a huge one, because that's an opportunity for us to all get together into one platform. Usually it's hosted in person, but obviously this past year it was hosted virtually given the conditions, and as well as next year, Microsoft will also be hosting the MVP Summit virtually, but I'll get into that in a second. But technically, they are hosted in person every year. And while they are hosted, what we do as an internal team is we release a lot of kind of what's known as NDA information. And so everybody who's an MVP is under NDA, meaning that they get internal scoops, more or less, that customers on a general scale will not have access to hearing for at least a while. And so when we present all those internal scoops and feedback to their MVPs, they're the ones to tell us, hey, this is a great idea, this is not so great. And then we work together to come up with a kind of strong, cohesive plan to then shape and then ship into our customers once we're ready. But this isn't only a time for us to present. we also have a series of sessions where we have like a Q&A session where it's really an hour of MVPs asking anything that's top of mind, from most high level to the most detailed description that they can think of. We're able to be there as an engineering, a design team, a marketing team, a business team, and answer all those questions for them so that they're a lot more comfortable with where we're going. They also have the opportunity to present demos. So we usually do kind of like a show and tell, where MVPs have the chance to share a demo with all of us on some new development that they've made or a new finding that they have worked on. And then once they share that with us, we even have that elevated up the scale where Microsoft as a whole recognizes those projects and kind of they get that MVP spotlight, more or less, where they're hosted on our website and they see that MVP X has done this really cool work with Access. Please reach out to them if you have questions. So it's a lot of really great exposure, I would say, both from a Microsoft lens as well as a community lens, because your community is looking up to you to be responsible, more or less responsible for kind of driving what's going on in that area. And so, but on top of that, they also have the opportunity to get even deeper and get into the actual company and kind of really see what's really going on behind the scenes that a lot of customers would not be able to see just because of NDA and legal precautions and restrictions as well. So basically, all in all, they are community leaders. They create a lot of content for us. That's one thing that I really appreciated, actually. They've written a lot of really good blog posts. We actually just started a monthly MVP Share Your Story session where every month an MVP will share a new development or a new finding that they have made, and then we'll get that published onto the Microsoft Access blog post community, and therefore Microsoft can then share it across the entire company. They get a lot of really good exposure, great call outs, etc. They help others, they help the community, they help Microsoft, and the list goes beyond. They also provide constructive and actionable feedback, and then they participate and lead some speaker sessions. So that was kind of a little bit of a long-winded answer between what MVPs are and what the summit is, but I'm happy to go deeper into either of those should any of you have questions. Does that make sense?
Yes, very good. So you covered the what and where of the MVP summit, and it will be virtual. Typically, it's in person. And can you tell us about the MVP program? Is it nomination-based, or what is the procedure for?
Yeah, so I believe I had a slide open here. So there's a couple things that you can do to get MVPs on the spotlight. Can you see my website, or are you still looking at my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So anyone can nominate an MVP if they're already an existing MVP or they're a full-time employee like myself. So I can go in and nominate anyone to be an MVP. And then once I go make that nomination, that goes up the leadership chain. And then they have reviews of what work this person has done to be eligible as an MVP candidate. And then they kind of go from there. Existing MVPs can also be ones to nominate others to become an MVP as well. So typically it's a nomination, it's a strong nomination program. I believe I've heard folks who have been able to apply on their own, and I was trying to look a little bit deeper into that before this call, but I didn't find too much information on how you can elect yourself. Typically what I've done in the past, if I've been the one to recommend or nominate MVPs, or someone in the program has done so for someone else.
Okay. And you mentioned that at the summit, the sort of things that go on are you have technical sessions, networking opportunities, and attended by MVPs and the regional directors.
That's correct.
So those are the main things that go on. Are there presentations?
There's sessions, there's in-depth technical sessions where people kind of break down into groups and get deeper into things. There's presentations. So I give a presentation at the beginning of every summit to say, okay, this is what's new in Access, and get deeper into, again, because everybody's NDA, I get deeper into what's really going on behind the scenes as my opening presentation. And then we have some developers on the team give kind of technical demos and walkthroughs on some of the things that they're working on. And then they always solicit feedback from the MVP community, et cetera, et cetera. So besides that, a couple of really fun things that we tend to do is the weekend before, we typically do a MVP happy hour. So we all meet up in the Bellevue area. We go to typically, the restaurants are typically a little upscale. So we go to different restaurants in the Bellevue area and kind of get together as a big group to just chat, get to know each other a lot better and stuff like that. But then throughout the week of the MVP Summit, there's also networking sessions, not only within Access, but beyond. So the summit is across the company. And so we'll have other sessions in Office, like in Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. We'll have sessions in Azure. We'll have sessions in Power Apps, etc. And so as an MVP, you can actually attend any session that you want. You don't only have to attend only Office or Access specific sessions. Obviously, as an Access MVP, we'd recommend it, but we're not offended if you're also interested in attending an Azure session that's also NDA, that you can get some inside scoop as well.
Okay, very good. And how would we find out more about the actual MVP program and what MVPs do?
So the first avenue I would say is this is a public website. If you just type in Microsoft MVP, you'll be taken to a website that's provided by our marketing and business folks. And it kind of talks everything about, you know, like what is an MVP, what's the most valuable professional, what events do we host. So you'll be able to actually see the global summit, and you'll get a lot of detail into when the summit is happening, what that's going to look like, et cetera. You'll also be able to find an MVP. If there's an MVP, you know, you can find them and kind of see what they're working on. And then there's all of these things. So, you know, there's videos, there's technology structures, what it takes to become an MVP, I would say would be a great source to start at so that you understand kind of what the qualification areas are.
Okay, well, we definitely thank you for your time today. That was enlightening, and anything new like this is definitely very worthwhile for this community.
For sure. Yeah, and please let me know, again, sorry for the delay here, but please let me know if you have further questions on this. I'm always happy to talk more about the program.
Okay, so thanks to Eva for his interview, and we will wrap up with a URL, and this is a site where all of the access events are located and listed for your review at Code Cabinet. This is a good resource, and I think at this time we can conclude and open our meeting up to any comments or questions at this time.